Hey everybody, this is Strategic Command Total Realism project. For both these instruction training manuals that I'm creating are to cover both Europe and World at War. This particular one will be covering land units and land combat. I created this special project campaign called TRP training. We'll be going into it. And on the top right of your screen, you should be seeing some notes that I created. I will be copying these notes into the description below on this video as well, so people can use them as kind of a cheat sheet and stuff um, to kind of give you a highlight of what are the major things you should be keened on when planning your strategies. So as this is loading, the first thing I want to cover, and it's one below the main topic, which is experience farming. It doesn't work anymore. Combat is really the only way to get experience now. So, just keep that in mind. Bombing empty cities or doing some strange things, I've limited how experience can be pulled in. So let's go over morale damage versus raw damage. Raw damage is, as everybody knows, directly against a unit. So if I go in to attack this unit, I'm seeing a 2-to-1. It means I'm going to lose two actual raw damage. I'm going to do 1 damage to the unit, the defending unit, and it's a plus or minus 1. Morale damage, you see here on this particular British unit that I'm looking at, it's got morale of 70. Morale affects the readiness. So the lower your morale, the lower the unit's readiness will be. This will have direct impact and consequences to combat, regardless of how well they're dug in and so on. It could have some catastrophic defenses. So just keep that in mind. Morale damage is extremely important in Total Realism project. It's the #1 thing that is done by your planes. So rocket artillery, well, let's go over this section right here, which I'm highlighting right now, right here. So the main things that do morale damage are tactical bombers, carriers, which also can do damage as well. Carriers can do damage to the actual land units, except for tanks and light armor. Escort carriers do only morale damage. Tank busters can do morale damage to everybody, but then do actual direct damage to light tanks and armor, and it's a little bit more, it's 1 notch higher than tactical bombers. Medium bombers do morale damage, and rocket artillery does morale damage. Now, morale damage is flatlined, so I want to show this to people where if you, so you see, let's do this one. Let's do a purchase, go to Germany, and guess we can't. Okay. I guess there's no way to really, oh, here we go. So if we were to increase our ground attack, you see that these numbers are only changing against other planes, but the demoralization and damage to the land units is not adjusting. Outside of our video that we did on planes, where you see where naval and against other planes it's increasing, which I covered this section, this part here in the middle. Against ground units, it does not. The reason is again, it can be too powerful. Morale damage is such a game changer where you can make it so that you can literally wipe out complete units with tactical bombers. I've covered this in a video before, and going over some of these things. Sorry, coffee break. So it's been kind of flatlined. Sort of think of it as subs too. So the main reason for increasing your ground attack is to negate damage from enemy planes. It's really the main thing, and so that you would also increase damage to enemy planes. So it comes in handy, for example, as the Axis, the Germans. You want to increase your damage because on the open volley of Barbarossa, there are several planes that the Russians get that show up near the front. So if you want, some of them you cannot reach with ground units. You have to use air power. So If you do not increase your ground attack abilities, you will not be able to destroy those planes on the ground because the Russians are getting 0 tech. And if you're at level 2 ground attack, you're getting +2 additional damage to those planes. It's a big difference. It doesn't 2 doesn't sound a lot, but if you just went from doing 2 normal damage at level 0 to now 4, you only need, because those planes are not at full strength 10, you only need 2 planes to totally wipe out the unit. So the ground attack tech is really important, and again, it negates damage when you're being intercepted by your opponent, and also if you're not being escorted. It negates the fighter damage that is done to you. It also negates damage from strafing runs from your opponents. So this does present some interesting scenarios. For example, if you're the Japanese player, China's not really spending any tech on air power because they need everything for land. So there's not much incentive for Japan to really focus on ground attack tech because they're not going to see much of a difference. However, later in the game for Japan, when they fight the Allies in Burma, in the Pacific, and Australia, if they send tactical bombers and medium bombers down there, it does at that point present a difference, a very big difference. So, Japan's got to play this thing of going back and forth. Is do I really want to spend it? I don't really need it for the first 2.5 to 3 years of the war, but I will potentially need it later. So you do have some scenarios like that. The effectiveness is still the same. So we covered the units that do morale damage and the more important ones. Now let's cover something called entrenchment. Entrenchment in this game is, think of it as basically digging foxholes. Your units sit in a hex and they dig into foxholes. On a unit per turn, and we're covering this section right here, right now, on the top. A unit per turn will dig in 1 entrenchment per turn, and then you can see what your max entrenchments level can be in the terrain by just right clicking and then viewing it, and then it'll tell you what your maximum can be. So each turn you go up by 1. Fortifications, fortresses, and so on. If you move a unit, so if you see this unit is right now at 0, there is no entrenchment. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong screen. But if you look right here, you'll see it's got 1 entrenchment for the hex that it's currently in. If I move 1 hex, it's now at 0 entrenchment. But if I move on to the fortification, it's now at 2. So fortifications automatically provide you at a base 2 entrenchment, and then increases 1 per turn after that. So keep that in mind, that the fortifications do have that additional bonuses, and also switching land units. So see, this guy's an entrench 1 and this guy's an entrench 1, but if I was to flip them, they're now both at entrench 0 if you're looking down here. So flipping units by holding the shift key down so they can flip their position will cause their entrenchment to go down by 1. It also causes any movement at all will also cause morale to go down. So keep this in mind. There are some bonuses that are given by HQs to morale recovery and stuff. That video, I'm just making you know about it, but that is not part of this video here. Okay, so so now we covered entrenchment and how that works and how important it is. Now let's go over the defense bonuses. So in the base game, you were able to right click, for example, on a forest, and it would tell you all these defenses here. In TRP, I removed all of that because these defense bonuses were flatlined. It didn't matter whether you put infantry, planes, or armor into the forest, they would all get the same defense bonuses. It just, to me, conceptually didn't make sense. There is an ability to create defensive bonuses at the terrain level. So if you look at, for example, this infantry here, he is a level 1, so he's getting a small defense bonus because of his technology. So he goes from a 3 as a base to a 4. But if you look at down here where this guy's in the mountains, he's getting a massive defensive bonus because of the mountains. But if you click here and do properties on the mountain, you'll see nothing. So bonuses now are at the unit level. Units get, depending on the unit type, will get different bonuses in the terrain. Mountain units obviously get better bonuses in mountains and hills than regular units, and so on and so forth. Planes don't get much of a bonus in rough terrain other than against other planes. So it doesn't matter whether the plane is in the mountains or in the forest. If you get a land unit next to it, you're going to be able to do some damage. The plane does not get any bonuses for being in rough terrain. So you see this fighter and you look at it, he's not getting any bonuses and he's in the mountains. So it's no different than being in a clear hex where you've got a fighter here. This guy's in the clear hex, and you see there's no bonuses here against land units. So it's a little bit confusing, I understand, because you can't see the bonus until you're actually in the terrain, but there are bonuses. Once you're in the terrain, you can see them. I think this conceptually is a better way of handling it than and it's more realistic to give units different abilities. Okay, so we covered defensive bonus, we covered entrenchment. Now let's look at de-entrenchment. So how do I de-entrench somebody? The de-entrenchment can be done by multiple factors, and I'm highlighting the section I'm about to talk about here now. There is medium bombers that do one de-entrenchment, strategic bombers that do one de-entrenchment. Engineers actually do two de-entrenchment, and their engineers are an interesting thing because engineers are not expensive. They just take very long to build. So if you're going to hit a fortification line or something that's very, very difficult, it doesn't cost that much to repair an engineer. So you can use them, attack once, even if they take big damage, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't cost that much to repair them. But you remove two entrenchment in one shot, and then you can retreat them and then bring your regular units up front. They're the only ones that have that ability for a 2D entrenchment, other than amphibs, and that will be covered in the C section. Amphibious, if you get your amphibious tech high enough, you can do 2 and sometimes 3. If you're all the way at max amphib, you can do 3D entrenchment. So, okay, so we got that covered. Other, all core size units also de-entrench. So basically, core size units. So you can see like garrisons are a core size unit. They can de-entrench. You'll see core infantry, core motorized. They can all de-entrench. So core size units all de-entrench, including paratroopers, elite units, even mountaineers. Mech and armor units also de-entrenched, and the only divisions that can de-entrench are division mechanized and a corps mechanized. Infantry divisions cannot de-entrench. So just you're not going to be able to de-entrench your opponent with them. Anti-tank cannot de-entrench. So just don't even bother trying. It will not happen. So like you said, you need to be aware of what can and cannot de-entrench. So now we covered that. Let's go to prepared attack units because we already covered morale earlier on. So let's do prepared attack units. We're in this section here. So in the base game, all units got a prepared attack bonus. And what this was causing is people to have this empty space on the front. So you would have the Germans, and then you would have the Russians 2 hexes away. And if the Germans moved up one, then the Russians, if the Russians wanted to retreat, they would move, they didn't want you to give you a prepared attack bonus, they would retreat 1. That doesn't make much sense to me. It's basically you're giving a bonus to the attacker when it's really should be the defender that gets the bonuses, not the attacker. So prepared attack bonuses are now limited to, as you can see that I've highlighted, all army units, including divisions, and all mechanized units, including divisions. They're the only ones that will have prepared attack bonuses. So keep that in mind whenever you're planning an offensive, putting the armor up. Like in our Barbarossa, I will destroy a town or city and make sure that my armor, or try to make sure that my armor has enough action points so that it can get to next to units at the next city so that I can keep moving forward, so I keep getting the prepared armor bonus. So if I take, for example, this city here, I try to get my armor unit all the way up to here, if possible. And then I'm sitting, basically, I'm getting the prepared bonus right away. Even if I don't see this unit, let's say it's invisible, if there's a Russian unit here, but it's invisible because of fog of war, um, most likely he's not going to do a surprise attack on me, so I would just move the armor straight up there. And then just be right up to him so that the next round I get my prepared attack bonus. Because it comes in very handy. So defensive areas, let's cover some of the things that you should be aware of on defensive lines, because there are some major differences between TRP and the base game. Rivers. Attacking across a river gives a 50% penalty to the attacker. So all major rivers. So this is, for example, the Dnieper River. You can see right here when you highlight with the mouse, you can see down below on the marsh, this section right here, you see it says major river. Minor rivers do a 30% penalty to the attacker. So you have to get across the river, and then your odds will change. So you do want to be aware of those bonuses. The river lines do make a big difference. They are considerably, the defensive bonuses are considerably higher than the base game. There's also a couple more rivers that I've added into Russia, like the rivers that existed like around Moscow. You'll see some new rivers around Kharkov and Kursk. The base game seemed to have this one river line here, but there was a reason why the Germans got stopped shortly after taking Kharkov and Kursk, because there was multiple river lines right after it that provided good defensive bonuses for the Russians. So now they exist, and if I have to add more rivers, we will. But be aware about those bonuses or the penalties to the attacker attacking across it, because it's not technically a bonus to the defender. It's a penalty to the attacker. So if the attacker finds a way to get around the river, then it goes away. Engineers. Engineers is the only unit that can attack across the river with no penalty at all. So if you want to try to, for example, remove de-entrenchment on this city here, you can position your engineer here, have him attack, take the 2 de-entrenchment off, and then have a unit attack from the swamp coming down, or a marsh, or the forest coming up to try to hit the city. So you don't have to try to find a way to get the engineer around just to do the attack. Engineers have no river penalties whatsoever. Rough terrain does provide bonuses against artillery attacks. So level 1 artillery is very, very devastating to units that are out in the open. If you're entrenched, they are not very devastating. It's very hard. You can see I can do 1 damage, but not much more than that. Say in here, these guys have 0 damage, and I think it's mainly because they are not only entrenched, but if you look at it, they're in the forest. So their defense against artillery is actually a 2. Whereas in these guys in this terrain have no defense against artillery. So keep that in mind. They also provide bonuses. So anti-aircraft was removed from all of your units. Terrain does affect anti-aircraft, so or affects your defensive bonus against planes. So if you see here, forest, your land units get a natural bonus against planes, but in the clear, you get nothing. There is nothing here. So rough terrain makes a difference. So keep that all in mind. Retreating. So we want to be on retreating and letting people know, because some people really didn't understand how retreat works. And they just would pile on line upon line and thinking units can retreat whatever. And they weren't sure, or they weren't sure on how far they could retreat. They're like, oh, some can retreat 2, all of them can retreat 2. That's not the case. Coffee time. Land units with 3 action points or less retreat 1 hex, and only 1 hex. So if you put a second layer behind them, they ain't going to be able to retreat. So keep that in mind. If you have a unit that is in a bad position that you're pretty sure is going to get hammered, and you want them to retreat, give them that extra hex. Any unit that gets 4 action points or more can retreat up to 2 hexes. So if you had, for example, a motorized unit in the bad position, like this guy, let's say here, he can retreat to either one of these 2 hexes if he's forced to. And the same thing goes for armor and tank destroyers and so on. Anything that uses wheels, basically, action points of 4 or higher. HQs as well can retreat 2 hexes. Planes retreat automatically, can retreat 3 hexes. So if they're attacked, they can go up to 3 hexes and retreat. All ships, surface ships, are 2 hexes. Subs can retreat 6 hexes. So keep that all in mind. Some additional notes: extra damage. Battleships and dreadnoughts, just to keep people so that they know. There is, other than doing a little bit of morale damage, shore bombardment does not do anything. You can no longer hit resources with ships. So we're taking your ship to bomb a port, unless there's a ship in it. You're taking your ship to bomb a port to try to lower the size of the port or a resource on the coast will no longer work. It will no longer lower them anymore. And again, I did this change because, one, it's a single ship, and then two, because of how simplistic the supply system is, was too easy for players to shut down full supply in entire countries, even if you're doing suicide runs with ships. So to negate some of this, I restricted it. So as you can say, kind of a compensation back for it, which kind of makes sense because the ships are limited, are battleships, to give people an incentive to build them. Battleships actually have a native soft and hard attack now. This comes in handy, especially in the Pacific War. Both battleships and dreadnoughts have this ability. So they can do shore bombardment, do a lot of morale damage, which I believe is 10. They do a lot of morale damage, or 10% morale damage. And they have an ability to actually damage the unit, the physical infantry corps, whichever type it is. Make sure it's only soft and hard attack, and it can actually damage it and make it simpler for any invasion that you are planning on doing. And how to do an invasion stuff will be covered in the C video. So attack combinations. So let's look at this section right here, attack combinations. So first, you want to always de-entrench. Before you do anything, if you're going to attack a hex, don't just randomly click and say attack, 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 attack. The differences in the units make a huge difference. And the way you use the units make a huge difference on combat. So if you're just pointing and clicking, just attacking randomly. I played this one player. I was the Allies and he was the Axis. And he lost about 2,000 to somewhere between 2,000 or 3,000 MPP in the German invasion of France, because he was wildly just attacking. He wasn't trying to use the units specifically designed to do certain things. He was just attack, 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 attack. And it basically had a long-term effect. So did France fall? Yes, it did. It's always a foregone conclusion unless you're the German player made some serious mistakes. But you should not suffer that much MPP as the Axis. You should be able to get away with less than 1,000 MPP. I've been able to do it around 500, but you should be able to stay way below 1,000 MPP as in total losses for taking out France. And the reason why you want to do that is because you need that MPP to build units to invade Russia. So learning these combinations and how to use them is extremely important. So your first plan of attack is to de-entrench your opponent. Second, before you launch and this is before you launch your actual physical land attacks, second is to lower the morale of the unit. Typically, you would use tactical bombers. Medium bombers also do some morale damage. Not a lot, but they do some. So they do 30. Well, actually, they do quite a bit. 30%, was a tactical bomber does 35. The medium bomber, though, the tactical bomber can do land damage, as you can see here, whereas in the medium bomber, its priority focus is the de-entrenchment. And it's mainly because the medium bombers have a target type of strategic, so they have the ability to do a double hit. So if you're hitting a city, they can hit the city and the unit that's on top of there. And then finally, that's when you attack with the land units. So normally, like in a Barbarossa or something like that, you're always going to see like these 0-0s for the medium bombers, or your medium bomber may take a little bit of damage if it's a rough terrain or something to that effect. But normally you would open up with like a medium bomber, try to lower the entrenchment, and then you open up with some tactical, and then you hit with the land units. And then sometimes you don't have air superiority, and then you need to use a combination of land units. So let me show you a combination that I use as the Russians whenever I'm trying to launch a counterattack against the Germans. And it works quite well. So keep in mind that the Russians' morale will be lower. The British have almost on par units with the Germans. So just keep that in mind, that there is a difference between fighting Russian units and then the British units. So right now you're seeing is 2-1. I'm going to try to hit this hex and this hex. So you see a 2-1, and then this guy's giving me 3-0. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use my rocket artillery to hit, and I lowered the morale, which was 70 to now to 49. His morale is now 70, and I'm going to hit him with a rocket attack, and he's now at 49. The odds did not change. On the Russian front, they would change, but the odds did not change. But it does make a difference. It will make a difference. Trust me on this. So now what we have is artillery still can't hit, which is fine. Artillery's raw damage. It does not de-entrench, especially at level 1. So now we got the morale done a little bit. Let's lower the entrenchment. Check the artillery. Now 2 is the maximum. So right now he's at a 2-2, but if we can actually try to lower this, because the 2 is the maximum from artillery, plus or minus 1 damage. So it's now safe to hit with the artillery to get maximum effect. So we pound again. It did not change the odds, but in most cases it would. And then now we can hit the next entrenchment, and now he's down to a 3. Now we got this guy down here. So I'm going to hit him with this guy here. Check the artillery. He still can't attack, but the odds changed to 3-1. Hit with him, the motorized. Check the odds. We're still not at maximum, and that's because he still has 1 entrenchment left. We'll hit him again. And now he's open. He should be open. There you go. See? Now we pound again, and the offensive begins. Now you can start pounding through the hole. So what you can do here is you retreat this guy, bring the armor up, pound. Now you got a hole. So I wanted people to see that you still can get through lines. Rocket artillery is one of the better units for lowering morale because they don't get hit back. And they can hit. So planes do get hit back. So I'm going to reload this, and then I'm going to show you with using planes. And I'm showing this combination so that people can see ways of breaking through the line. So here, I'm going to de-entrench with the medium bomber. So he's now down to 1, and then we also did some morale damage. And you saw that the attack has now changed. Now my Stuka, when I click on my Stuka, it still says 0-0. Well, remember that the Stuka has an ability to attack as a 1. So it's kind of you want to try to lower the morale some more, which you can. So let's hit it with the rocket artillery this time. And did the Stuka go up to 1? No, it did not. So, but the artillery is now at 2. So let's see if we can hurt him. And again, these are common. You just don't blind click. You got to look around at your units, what they can do. So you hit him twice. It wasn't enough to change the odds, but it did lower the morale down to 28%. The Stuka is still at 0. So now let's do it at a land unit. Now let's check the Stuka. See, now the Stuka is at 1. So the Stuka is now getting its full effect of what it can do. And it costs you just 3 MPP, or 3 strength of that infantry unit. Now pound it with the Stuka. Unfortunately, we missed, but the morale damage got through. But then look how it made it easy for this guy. And now, not only did it make it easier for that guy, now I can actually get the armor in, and then I can attack my flanks. If I really wanted to be crazy, I could kind of do this. And that lowered the morale there. And then we could do as a suicide attack there. And then temporarily bring this artillery up. Pound. Pound. Switch the artillery back out. You saw what I just did there. And now that armor can just rip through. And I got a big hole in the line. See, you got a big hole. So keep in mind in these combinations, don't just click, 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 click. Remember what the units can and can't do, what their strengths are, and keep in mind on those combinations. And then you can break through the line. I killed basically 2 British units, and I suffered 2 strength here, 1 strength here, and 3 strength here. So he lost basically about 300 MPP worth of units. And I lost maybe 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe a 40, 50 MPP, something like that. Not much more. Well, his were in supply, so they'll get a little bonus. But still, the damage that I was able to do was a lot more, even though they were entrenched. And this was with a prepared attack. I set this all up with a prepared attack. So it's not easy getting this kind of concentration. But I wanted people to see that it is very, very possible. And because there's so many extra turns in TRP, you have time to maneuver. This isn't a rush. This isn't a sprint. It's a marathon. So breakthroughs, adjustments, and try to maneuver. It's a battle of maneuvers, as I said in some of my other videos. So with all that said, I think that covers the tutorial on the land combat basics and how it works, and hopefully that is enough to get people going. There'll be more videos on training, and I hope you look through them. And till next time, thank you, everybody.